Well, hello, everyone across the country. I'm Tim Phillips with Americans for Prosperity. I'm coming to you from the suburbs outside of Chicago, where we're doing some good grassroots organizing against this 3.5, 4-point try, whatever the final number ends up being, $1 trillion bill that Biden, Schumer, Pelosi are trying to jam through. It'll have so much else, the Green New Deal and tax increases and the Bernie Sanders socialized medicine and so much more. We're continuing our series of Facebook conversations with key leaders in Congress, with our state directors, about ways that we can continue to work to stop this legislation and get back to the freedom and prosperity that we know makes our nation great. So with me today is our state director from Missouri, Jeremy Cady. Jeremy, take it away.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate it. And as Tim said, my name is Jeremy Cady. I'm the State Director of Americans for Prosperity in the great state of Missouri. And I want to welcome everyone for joining us to have this special discussion on the budget boondoggle that is currently being discussed in Congress. Joining us today is Congressman Jason Smith of Missouri's 8th Congressional District, who has been working hard to reduce the size of government and eliminate burdensome regulations since he took office in 2013 and even before then in the Missouri State House. Congressman Smith, Tim had mentioned that we're working with key leaders on this. And one of the reasons why we're honored to have Congressman Smith with us is because he has special insight into this boondoggle, being the ranking Republican member of both the Budget and Ways and Means Committee in the House. So he has a lot of insight on this particular issue. Congressman, with your insight, what would you say is the most negative impact that you're seeing in this boondoggle? Or what would you say would be the most negative impact Missourians are going to see from this boondoggle?
Jeremy, it's great to be with you, Tim. It's great to also be with you. Thank you all for what you're doing. We need to save America, and a way to do that is to kill this bill. And so when you talk about calling it a boondoggle, I haven't used those words, but that's great. I mean, that's exactly what it is. I tell folks this is the worst piece of legislation that I have ever seen in my entire life in public service. And we have to kill this bill. This is the largest spending bill in the history of the United States. And it is the largest tax increase in the history of the United States. They started out with $3.5 trillion. After their markup over the last 2 weeks in the 13 different committees of jurisdiction, they have decided to spend $4.3 trillion in their 2,540 pages. The Budget Committee is responsible for pulling in all the 13 different committees that have had markups. And now we will have one markup that creates the one bill. And I'll tell you, this bill is the worst of the worst, with tax increases over $1 trillion in tax increases on families, working families. Joe Biden said he wouldn't raise taxes on people making less than $400,000 a year. That is a complete lie. This bill raises taxes on people who make less than $400,000 a year. This bill raises over $1 trillion in taxes on businesses, small businesses. In fact, it raises taxes on job creators that the tax rates will be higher than that of tax rates in communist China. I mean, and the spending, like I said, $4.3 trillion worth of spending. If they pass this piece of legislation, Jeremy and Tim, if they pass this piece of legislation and what they have passed in the last 18 months in just new spending, that will be more than the entire wages of all Americans for a year. Think about that. In just new spending, not spending to run government, in additional spending. If this is passed and the spending in the last 18 months, we're in a mess. But there's so many other horrible provisions in there. We can talk about it, but I just gave you some of the line from. And think about this, Jeremy and Tim. Our country is predicted to hit the highest inflation since 1981, since Jimmy Carter policies. The highest inflation without one additional dollar of reckless spending. And now they're trying to propose $4.3 trillion. You talk about putting logs on the inflation fire, it's going to explode.
Yeah, folks watching, over 1.7 million of you have taken action already to make your voices heard against this legislation. You've sent emails, you've called using our switchboard. Right there in the thread of this Facebook Live is the I Volunteer link. It's a big moment for the country. Make sure your voice is heard. By clicking that link, you'll be able to directly connect to your 2 U.S. senators and your House member, urging them to vote no. And when we talk about the inflation, it's literally at levels we haven't seen since Jimmy Carter's era. And who does that hurt the most? It hurts senior citizens on fixed incomes. It hurts that single mom with a couple of kids, maybe on an hourly wage. And that's who it hurts when they go to the grocery store and hamburger meat's over $6 a pound, or when gas is over $3.50, up to $4 in some states. That's who it's hitting. It's a tax on people who can least afford it. Along with this spending, though, Congressman, there's also elements of the Green New Deal. There's elements of Bernie Sanders' socialized medicine. Can you talk a little bit? You know, it's a bad piece of legislation when, along with the spending at levels we've never seen and the taxes at levels we've never seen, there's also really an extreme left agenda being forced into this bill. Can you talk about that a little bit as well?
Absolutely, Tim. This bill is all about using the power of the purse and the power of taxation to have more command and control over the lives of every American. And that's essentially what it does. Hundreds of billions of dollars of tax breaks for the wealthiest of Americans, all at the expense of working class. Hundreds of billions of dollars in implementing the Green New Deal, whether it's the cow tax, whether it's taxes on natural gas. I mean, we're already facing an energy crisis, and this bill only makes it worse. Whether it is the provisions to provide for benefits to illegal immigrants. We see what's going on at the border with the border crisis right now. This bill will only make the border crisis worse because of the policies that's in it. They originally tried to provide $109 billion in this bill to provide amnesty for 10 million illegals. Well, just yesterday, the Senate parliamentarian said that they can't do that, but that now they're going to try to use that money and add more money to it to provide all the benefits to illegals. They may not provide amnesty, but they're now going to try to use it to provide all kinds of federal benefits to illegals. This bill provides free college educations to millionaires' kids. Millionaires' kids. This bill provides paid government leave, paid federal leave to people making $500,000 a year, where they'll get $28,000. I mean, it's all about rewarding their political friends and allies. The huge tax breaks for luxury cars, billions of dollars. The fact that it is forcing states to provide abortion services through Medicaid, it's unacceptable. I could go line by line of all the items that's within this bill, whether it's providing $82,000 in a down payment for people who make $200,000 to purchase a home. I mean, they are giving away the farm. They're giving away the bank. And I mean, my colleagues, they think you can just print more money. They think you can just print more money. Think about this. Since the Democrats have taken control, Tim, since the Democrats have taken control of Congress, if they pass this legislation, and with the Bernie budget that was passed 2 weeks ago, they have passed and spent more money since they took Congress in 2019 than all the taxes we have paid in this country since our founding as a nation. Think about that. They have now, with the passage of the Bernie budget and everything since 2019 that they have spent on, we have spent more money than all the taxes paid by all Americans since the founding of this great nation. That tells you where we're at. This $4.3 trillion spending bill that's before us, you could build the interstate highway system 8 complete times in today's dollars with $4.3 trillion. That tells you how bad this bill is.
Congressman, you had mentioned something that I'd like to kind of bring us back to a little bit, and that's we're often told and sold that this is to tax the rich, that they need to pay their fair share. But one of the things that we're also seeing is an expansion of the IRS control and some of their ability to actually look into the accounts of Missourians and Americans as a whole. Does that look like they're trying to actually get into and focus on the rich, or do you think they're going to be looking at just normal average Missourians to pull out more taxes?
Let me tell you, some of the original proposals, Jeremy, are so frightening. And what's so scary is that if you follow the pattern of Nancy Pelosi, she tends to rewrite all legislation in the Rules Committee. And that is what frightens all of us, with a lot of provisions that they feel that if you put it out there too early, it could cause their bill to die. So usually they put the really, really bad stuff at the last moment in the Rules Committee, right before it comes to the floor. That is the pattern. That's the history of Speaker Pelosi. And it looks like she's going to do the same thing, whether it is some of the IRS provisions, or whether it's the SALT, or whether it's a stepped up basis on the death tax. These are provisions that I would say that she will probably put through on the Rules Committee, or you'll see the senators put it in. But think about this. In this bill, there's an allocation of almost $80 billion. $80 billion to hire 86,000 new additional IRS agents to make sure that they can turn over every rock, turn over every leaf, to make sure every hardworking American is paying their taxes appropriately. One of the original proposals that was discussed is to make sure that anytime you pull $600 or more out of your bank account, and that would be reported to the IRS. Right now, it's $10,000 is typically what's reported to the IRS. $600 is not a lot of money. If you went to the ATM and pulled $600 out under their original proposal, it'd be reported to the IRS. They want to know what you're doing with your money, why you're pulling it out, why you're depositing $600 or more, and where it's going to be spent. It's just another way to have more command, more control over your lives. It's all about freedom, Jeremy.
Congressman, can you give us a sense of the time frame here? I know you're marking and working on this bill in the House of Representatives right now. We're 21st or so of September, 22nd, or third week of September, basically. Can you give us a sense as folks are watching this and they're contemplating, what can I do? What can I do on my social media accounts to spread the word about this? What can I do in calling my members of Congress and doing rallies or events? Give us a sense of your best feeling of what we're looking at time frame wise to be able to fight this legislation, oppose this legislation, defeat it.
Absolutely, Tim. We were supposed to mark up this legislation today in the Budget Committee, but Speaker Pelosi has delayed it. We're not even marking it up this week. That tells me she's still looking for votes. And so it looks like next week is whenever the House Budget Committee will mark up the bill, then it'll go to the Rules Committee, then it'll go to the floor. Folks, we can kill this bill. And we have to kill this bill for America. And the way that you do it, the more Americans find out the details of this bill, the more they find out what's in it, and they talk to their legislators, that's how we kill it. We need 4 Democrats to stand with us for America to make sure that we do not allow this bill to pass. And Tim, I will tell you, there were 5 various Democrats in the markups of the 13 different committees that voted against provisions within this bill. We need 4. We need 4 on the House side. Of course, we only need 1 Democrat senator to join with us. And we have 2 that have been very vocal that they either want to pause it or that they don't want to spend over $3.5 trillion or $3 trillion. So there's avenues in making sure of doing it. But the way this bill dies is that the American people call their legislators, call their representatives, and make sure that those representatives hear their concerns. And Nancy Pelosi would love to pass this bill before anyone knew what was in it. It's a pattern, it's sort of like the Biden way too. And We just need to make sure that we communicate to all of the patriots across this country that they know what's in it, and be active on social media. Share the message. You can come to our Facebook page or our Twitter. We're trying to push out the items that's in this bill constantly, because I'm telling you, out of 2,540 pages as it stands right now, you keep discovering even more and more every day that's even worse.
You know, you mentioned some of those items that, you know, Missourians need to know, that Americans need to know, that's in that bill. And I think Tim kind of alluded to it a little bit before, but one of the things that I did want to kind of draw out a little bit more, because we saw a big push for this whenever it was talked about before, you know, several years ago, was Obamacare. Missourians, you know, stood fast against Obamacare whenever that was passed. And if you recall, in the state of Missouri, I think that was put on the ballot twice, and Missourians heavily opposed that. But at the same time, I don't think the healthcare in the budget boondoggle is discussed well enough. What are some of what would you say the healthcare scenarios in the budget boondoggle compared to Obamacare?
Well, it expands on Obamacare. For example, it provides huge subsidies to the wealthy. I mean, people making several $100,000s a year will get a very large increase of subsidies for Obamacare. I talked about briefly of providing funding of abortions within healthcare. You're talking about the expansion of services that's already included under other healthcare items, such as Medicare Advantage, where they're now trying to create additional programs that are already covered, where Americans can provide on it. But the funding of it would be so astronomical that in some things, they're even trying to phase it in by the year 2028. Well, Jeremy, as you and Tim know, Medicare will be insolvent by 26 if we don't take care of it. And it's not paid attention to. But you know what? The Biden bailout bill that they passed back in the spring, the $1.9 trillion bill, they have not paid for that. And guess what? Under the PAYGO requirements, Medicare will be gutted out several $100 billion because of their wasteful spending bill just back in February and March. And it was supposed to go for COVID and healthcare funding, and less than 9% of it went towards healthcare. This bill is doing the same thing. It is rewarding their political friends, their allies, their donors. And let me tell you, the Democrat Party, just to be completely honest with you, they try to say that they're the party of the working class. That is another complete lie. That's like Joe Biden saying he's going to get everyone out of Afghanistan before he pulls the troops. We still have Americans in Afghanistan. It's a complete lie. He did not do that. He still has not done that. Think about this. There were millions of dollars that Wall Street spent to defeat President Trump and to elect Joe Biden. The 10 most wealthy congressional districts in the nation are held by some of the most liberal Democrats in Washington. They are the party of the wealthy ruling elites. They are not the party of the working class. And this $4.3 trillion bill is rewarding their wealthy friends, their political allies, their donors. Basically, if you're aligned with them, you will benefit greatly in tax breaks. It's like tax breaks for green new policies, climate change proposals. You go list by list. This is what this bill does. It clearly takes away the 10th Amendment rights of states, and it's basically forcing the heavy hand of the federal government with the power of the purse.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Congressman Jason Smith from Missouri. It's a big moment for the country. I mentioned that earlier. Sometimes you hear something like that. This is a big moment. One of those inflection points that I believe we'll look back on in 5 or 10 years and we'll say either socialism became a much more pronounced top-down from DC part of our daily lives, thus harming our freedoms and prosperity, or as a nation, we were able to stop it. I really believe we're going to look back at these next few weeks and say that. Let's make sure that you can say, I did my part. Click that I volunteer link. Make sure your 2 senators and your House member hear from you. You may be thinking, hey, my guys are good. My guys are good. They're going to vote against this, or my gals are going to vote against this. They need to know you've got their back. They need to feel encouraged by that, because they're taking a beating from a lot of special interests in DC. I can tell you that. Or you may be thinking, well, gosh, this is a very liberal member that I have. They're going to vote for this no matter what. They need to hear from you. Every member I know, and I've worked on the Hill for a number of years, they keep track on a daily basis how many folks from back home contact them, what the issues are, and whether it's a yes or a no on that issue. And then they talk about it with their colleagues. Make your voice heard. Get on social media. Post about this. We have links at Americans for Prosperity. I bet you can go to Congressman Smith's page as well, and you can get memes and clicks from there or information from there. Make your voice heard. Congressman, I'll give you the last word, and here's what I'd like you to address. We've talked about the threats. I also know you, and I know you're an optimistic person who's very hopeful about our nation's future. Give us a sense as we walk away today why you're still hopeful about our country in the midst of these threats.
You know, Tim, thank you for having us. It's a pleasure. But we live in the greatest nation known to mankind. And it is a nation that is worth fighting for our values, our way of life, and our freedoms. That's what we're all founded on. That's what our country was founded on. That's what we believe. And you cannot step back and let bad get in the way. And when you have items like this legislation and all the different crises that's going on, you can't just sit back and say someone else is going to do it. You got to stand up to the plate. You don't know by who you talk with, who you share a message with, a social media post on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whatever, how someone might read that and see the light and see the truth. And that one person might be able to connect with someone else that can make the difference. I'll tell you, we just need a handful of votes to help protect our freedoms and help to protect our way of life. And just the little movement can go a long way. So everyone needs to be involved. Everyone needs to fight. Everyone needs to communicate, and we can do it. You can go to my page, follow me on Facebook or Twitter. It's Jason Smith Mo, Rep Jason Smith. Either one is fine. We are trying to get that information out, trying to communicate it, because we want the country to know that we are all about protecting and saving America, and we need to kill this bill, and this is how we're going to do it.
Well said, Congressman Jason Smith from Missouri. I'm with Jeremy Cady, our Missouri AFP State Director. I'm out on the road, Tim Phillips. I can tell you, folks, grassroots wins. Washington, D.C., the coast, et cetera, San Francisco with Pelosi, they get their say, and they've got the dominant media. But I'm telling you, there's a rebellion brewing out here at the grassroots. I can feel it every day. I can see it. And it's a rebellion in the best sense of that word. Standing up and working and reaching out to our fellow Americans to bring them to our views and our philosophy, which is freedom, individual liberty, responsibility, and that leads to the prosperity that's helped make our nation great. Thank you for all you do. We'll be seeing you out on the road.
Thank you all.